Welcome to the International Luxury Hotel Association's webinar series, where top hotel owners, operators, developers, suppliers, and brands connect to shape the future of luxury hospitality. For over 15 years, the ILHA has been the most influential association in the industry, with global chapters and the largest hospitality network on LinkedIn, 500,000 members strong. Our flagship event, Inspire, is the leading luxury hospitality conference in Europe and the US, where decision-makers network, share insights, and get deals done. Visit us at ilha.org.
I'm Jonathan Day. I'm a professor of hospitality and tourism at Purdue University. My specialty is sustainable tourism and sustainable hospitality, and I am thrilled to be here today with these three experts on this really important topic. Today we're talking about redefining luxury, sustainable innovation that drives profit, wellness, and brand impact. And I'm thrilled that we're being able to present that in partnership with Flow Water. And of course, Flow Water and Raz is going to be here in the conversation as well. So we've got insights from a number of experts. And indeed, in addition to Raz Gaitis, who is the CEO of Flow Water, we've got Dr. Brandon Morrison, who's the Executive Director of Sustainability at Resorts World in Las Vegas, and Mark Coluccio, the COO of Solterra and co-founder of Cascada. So what I want to do to kick the ball off here, to get the ball rolling, is to give people a little bit of a chance to do an introduction. We are going to have a really rich conversation. There's a number of things that we're going to cover over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. And to give some context to that, what I wanted to do is sort of ask each of you to tell us a little bit about who you are and about the work that your company is doing. And of course, we'll get more into detail later, but give us a brief intro if you wouldn't mind. And so, Raz, if I could ask you to make that first introduction, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. My name's Rich Razgaitis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Flow Water. Most people know me as Raz. 12 years ago, I set out to co-found this company to focus on restoring America's drinking water. And this was really prompted by two material issues that we're facing in the United States. One is there is a prolific plastic problem. It's the new environmental cigarette. We'll talk more about that later. But then the second piece of it is, I believe and we believe that Americans should have a fundamental human right to access to clean drinking water. That right doesn't exist today in the United States. And so that's what our company is focused on solving. And I've got a team of about 80 people in the United States that are focused on national distribution and rebuilding America's drinking water through flow water refill stations and other products like that.
Fantastic. Brandon, could I ask you to give your intro as well?
Absolutely. Thank you, John, and thank you to the ILHA for the invite this morning. So my name is Brandon Morrison, and I serve as Executive Director of Sustainability here at Resorts World Las Vegas. Resorts World Las Vegas blends sort of luxury hotels and state-of-the-art meeting convention facilities with a variety of amenities as an integrated resort, including gaming, nightlife, live entertainment, celebrity chef restaurants, and retail offerings. We are owned by Genting Berhad out of Malaysia, and perhaps most poignant to this conversation, sort of two key pieces of information. One, the most expensive resort development ever in Las Vegas, $4.5 billion of investment spanning 88 acres and 7 million square feet of conditioned space. And two, it was truly built with sustainability in mind. So it is the largest LEED Gold certified hotel in the world.
Fantastic. And so can we move to you, Mark? Could you give us a brief introduction to the work you're doing?
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mark Coluccio, and I'm with a company called Solterra. We're a ultra sustainable developer in the Pacific Northwest, focusing on Seattle and Portland primarily. And the Cascada portion of that title that you mentioned is our newest independent hotel brand that we've launched. And it's a ultra sustainable wellness resort style hotel that focuses on not only sustainability and wellness, but we have very large thermal, so contrast therapy, et cetera, thermal amenities within the building. It's also the first location is the first LEED Platinum mass timber hotel in the world.
Fantastic. Well, I love the range of experiences that we have here with this group. What I'd like to do to kick this conversation off, and I think that it's always an important question to start with, is, what are the most compelling reasons, business reasons, for luxury hotels to prioritize sustainability today? And sometimes it feels a little feels like sustainability might not be at the forefront, but for you guys, I think it is. And so what are the business reasons for that? If I can start with you, Brandon, and then I'm going to go to Mark and then to you, Raz, if that works as we go. So yeah, Brandon, what's you're committed to sustainability. What's the business reason there?
Yeah, for us, it's a bit of sort of a brand differentiator, if you will, in that, again, we are owned by Genting Berhad out of Malaysia, and they've been sort of practicing and emphasizing and publishing on sustainability dating back to 1982. So when we think about the first Earth Day, the term sustainability really didn't even exist back then. And they've been publishing, again, sort of sustainability, conservation, responsible operation reports, again, dating back to 1982. So for us, it was sort of a non-negotiable in the ideals of sustainable development, sort of making sure you're bettering the community in which we're operating, again, as a very large integrated resort with 3,500 rooms and suites. We want to be making sure, we're doing right by the environment and also for our guests and team members as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'll throw to you now, Mark. What are the business reasons from your perspective?
Well, I think you've got kind of your standard business reasons that don't just pertain to luxury hotel. So start a little bit more broad. There's typically, of course, you've got environmental stewardship, which is the most important reason. But the other reason is that there is actually typically a compelling ROI with a lot of sustainability efforts, and we try to focus on a lot of those. From the luxury hotel perspective, I think that sustainability, wellness, and guest experience have never meshed so well. There are better materials that are sustainable. It does require a bit more work to get those completed and up to par for a luxury hotel experience, but they are healthier for you. They help you do things like eliminate microplastics within the food or the water within the property. And so there's a lot of reasons, but I do think a lot of them come down back to guest experience first and foremost, and then making sure that they align with both environmental stewardship as well as having some amount of return on investment for the owner.
And so, Raz, you're looking at a variety of different businesses as well, beyond even hospitality. For you, what do you consider to be the business reason for being involved in sustainability most generally?
I'm going to answer that two different ways. One is often when I talk on sustainability panels or I go to events like sustainability forums like Sun Valley Forum and speak there, I think a lot of people tend to think I run a sustainability company, and I actually try to flip it, partly for reasons that I'll share in a second. But my focus really is, and our entire focus around driving sustainability is hospitality ROI, cost savings, guest impact, and consumer behavior. And so there's a Nielsen study several years ago that showed that companies that have ESG related initiatives drive about 1/3 better ROI with consumers. And so I think the simple answer on this is consumer sentiment is changing. And so companies go where the market goes in many ways. And so we could look at the sustainability and say, hey, this is the right thing to do, but the right thing needs to coincide with business mechanics, business ROI, profitability measures, owner ambitions, property management group ambitions, and then ultimately the guests drive that. And so I think the best answer to this is consumer sentiment is radically shifting over the last 5 years. And we're also living in a world where a lot of greenwashing has been done. And so, a lot of sustainability initiatives have been kind of shrouded as do this is good for the environment, but the consumer doesn't necessarily see that. And so I think we're living now in a world where consumer ROI is tied to impact and experience. And I think customer demand is the number one driver behind this. And then there's other attributes sitting behind that.
Fantastic. And, I just want to create a safe space. Brandon, Mark, if you have anything to add after you hear any of these conversational points, right, please throw in, and let's have as much of a conversation as anything as we go through. One of the things when we talk about sustainability is that we often land on three sort of components of it, right? There is, quite commonly, we talk about waste reduction and waste. We talk about energy and energy conservation, how we manage our energy, and of course we talk about water. And so, I want to spend a little bit of time here in the water domain because it's so pertinent to this conversation. And what I want to do is go to you, Raz, and I know that you cover your business is involved in a number of different aspects of sustainability, even though you probably don't start at that point. And one of those aspects is some concern around the drinking water that we have and consumers' perceptions of it. And so I wanted to give you some space to talk to us a little bit about skepticism about the safety of water and how your product can solve some of those concerns as well as deal with these sustainability issues. So can we start with that conversation?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's great. And this is a topic that I get really excited about because this is really mission driven for us. And so in the last 6 months, I've done well over a dozen different media interviews. We have no consumer products, and I'm evangelizing around awareness of the drinking water issues that we have in the United States. So yes, we have a solution for hospitality. We're not the only solution though as well. Of course, I'm biased to what we provide, but what I really want to do is halo around what are the two biggest issues as it relates to water and tied to sustainability, but also just health and hydration as well as consumer sentiment. One is we live in a world where consumers can no longer trust or should be drinking tap water in the United States. I'll give you a couple data points for that. One, 50,000 chemicals are in use in the United States today. Fewer than 100 of these are regulated by the Safe Drinking Water Act. 56% of Americans have been drinking water with lead in it in the last 5 years. 200 million Americans are drinking water with PFAS in it. We have a major issue with our drinking water in the US. And consumers now know I shouldn't be reaching for a plastic bottle. The average American is sitting with one plastic spoon's worth of microplastics in their brain. So this idea of, okay, I don't feel like I can trust the tap water. I don't want to drink out of a single-use plastic water bottle. It creates a conundrum. That conundrum has led to 70 to 80% of Americans being chronically dehydrated. And this is one of those simple things to solve for, but the issue we have in the United States is not could I only find a faucet? It's that consumers don't trust or don't like what's coming out of that faucet. And so our advocacy and my conviction is that we now live in a world where you have to treat your water twice. That means you have to change the last 5 feet. You have to do something about water in the last 5 feet of the water line. And that's part of what we solve for. We're not the only company that solves for that. And in consumer households is very different than hospitality and schools. And so we believe that this is worth solving for from a hospitality perspective because it is so top of mind in guest experiences. RFK is only driven that, of course, with all this topic around fluoride. It's not an RFK message other than this is contemporary conversation. And so it's a hot topic that is worth solving.
To Brandon and Mark as well. hoteliers have really spent a lot of time and effort, addressing, this dual problem of, you know, too many plastic containers, right? And particularly water bottles and that sort of thing, and making sure that people are have access to good hydration and so forth. And I wonder if you could share, and I'll ask you, Mark, first, and then I'll come to Brandon. The initiatives that you're taking around, this dual problem of reducing plastic and making sure that people have access to water.
Sure. And I'd echo basically everything that Raz said. Um, if you want to reduce single-use plastic waters, it's relatively simple from the standard terms. You have to provide vessels and clean drinking water on site. So there's only a few materials that we say we trust from the perspective of all chemical, keeping PFAS out and microplastics, et cetera. So glass and stainless steel and ceramic and silicone basically are the four types of vessels that we utilize on site in different areas, depending on, near a pool, you don't want to have glass as an example. So we offer those in room as well as throughout the site, and we have filtered water stations on every floor of the building, in every area within our thermal and amenity spaces, et cetera. So, you do your best to do that. It requires a different type of stocking, but it does, which is of these vessels that do tend to go missing and get broken. And it also requires more maintenance from a washing perspective for the vessels that are reused. Um, but it does eliminate a ton of waste, and it does eliminate all of that or the majority of any microplastics that you might be drinking or any of these other chemicals. So
Mm.
it's kind of a win-win, in my opinion. And I do hope that every hotel and restaurant, et cetera, moves to this style of hydration.
Fantastic. Brendan, anything that you can add to the conversation?
Yeah, I think we employ some of the same techniques that Mark just mentioned. We do obviously have some single-use plastics on the property that's 7 million square feet in size, but our casino areas, public-facing areas, our convention space, our meeting facilities all offer bottle filling stations, whereby if the guest has their own water bottle, they can refill with filtered, clean, cold tap water. And then we also in our hotel tower, talking about single-use plastics, go with bulk amenities as opposed to the single-use disposable amenities as a means to cut down again on single-use plastic. But I'd maybe offer a third issue with water. Talk about water quality. We've talked about single-use plastics. Our biggest concern in Las Vegas is water quantity. So we're living in a desert area where we made national news with Lake Mead shrinking and declining in water levels. And it is the driest major metropolitan area in the world, talking about the Las Vegas Valley. We just had our hottest year on record with single-day temperatures reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So water quantity, in addition to quality and single-use plastics, water quantity is increasingly an item of concern for sustainability practitioners here in Las Vegas.
So how are you encouraging, is that something that you're encouraging your guests to use less water? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so we look at it sort of in two ways, if you will, in terms of consumptive water versus non-consumptive water. And it's sort of the simple layman's term definition, if you will, is consumptive water is water that's not returned to the system. So evaporative cooling towers, irrigation systems, pools, lakes, water features, etc. Non-consumptive water is essentially anything that hits a drain. So we use water efficient fixtures, appliances, etc. in the guest rooms, and all of that water is actually recycled by the municipality here in Las Vegas. So our big concern is basically outside water use, looking at irrigation systems, our cooling towers, whereby a lot of the indoor water, yes, it's a low flow shower head, but a guest could take an hour-long shower and that water is getting recycled by the Las Vegas Valley Water District. So a lot of our time and effort is spent on sort of consumptive uses of water, whereby the water is not being recycled.
So that segues into probably the next question that I wanted to ask the three of you, and I'll stay there with you, Brandon, for a second. In addition, this water stewardship can be an important part of your brand development and the visitor experience that you're trying to create. And I've done a lot of travel this summer, and I've seen some great examples of communicating that not only with non-plastic water in the room and that sort of thing, but also, helping consumers to see what is often invisible. The work that you're doing behind the scenes to make sure that water stewardship is an important part of it. And I'm just curious, do you communicate that, the invisible things so that the consumer knows, that the visitor who comes to Las Vegas and knows that they're in the desert, knows that you're concerned about water consumption? Is it a part of the brand that you're presenting as you're going through? And then the way we'll do this, I'll go to Mark, and then I'll come into Raz to get some perhaps some perspectives on ways that other organizations are building brand through their sustainability efforts. But Brandon.
Yeah, so it is and it isn't. And let me explain that. So we try to sort of selectively market our sustainability efforts. And what I mean by that is sort of sustainability marketing for us is a bit of a challenge in that our clientele is split as an integrated resort. So sort of 4 days out of the week, we cater to the business crowd and convention groups. And then sort of the weekends, we focus on the leisure market. That leisure market, there are some studies that, again, are sort of shifting towards a more eco-friendly, sustainability-based mindset. But by and large here in Vegas, we found that guests tend to focus sort of more on vice than virtue. So leisure travel doesn't necessarily have sustainability top of mind. And that's why we try to incorporate sort of sustainability behind the scenes, whereby we're making that eco-conscious choice for the guest. And they don't have to necessarily prioritize sustainability while they're here in Las Vegas for whatever they may or may not be celebrating. But increasingly, those convention groups, that business sector of the market is increasingly asking about sustainability, whereby the group comes with an RFP for their annual meeting or their innovation summit, whatever it may be. Sustainability is increasingly a component of that RFP process, whereby you're truly being judged against your sustainability features and offerings compared to your peers down the strip. So we try to market, we do publish an annual sustainability report. We do have collateral within the rooms, both on our digital screens and also on sort of placards by the guests advertising, green housekeeping features, for instance. So we try to find sort of a middle ground in terms of advertising versus keeping some of those sustainability features truly sort of back of house and behind the scenes.
Fantastic. I'll swing to you now, Mark. Has your business, MICE has been one of the drivers, meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions have been one of the drivers of sustainability. They have a big voice in our industry. How about your business mix and the way that that you're moving towards building brand around some of these sustainability activities, particularly water stewardship at this point?
Yeah, so I think most hotels are going to have a fairly similar mix, as Brandon mentioned, where you do have two audiences. One is leisure, one is corporate and group during the week. And we're no different. We probably side a little bit further on the leisure. And so I do think that there is overall an attention deficit to sustainability due to the greenwashing that Raz mentioned. And so we try not to do that. We try to minimally communicate it. However, it is on multiple touch points as you walk around the property or as you check in. As an example, if you're in our sanctuary, you will see that there's a large cistern for rainwater recapture that we use to flush the toilets, and it's marked as such. The key cards say they're fully compostable right on them. Just putting only glass water bottles out in the rooms, as an example, it just becomes kind of more apparent. And then we also describe the health benefits of certain sustainability measures that we've taken with regard to, for example, using Dunlap latex over petroleum-based foam within our beds and within the majority of our furniture on site. So we basically try to tie it to something the consumer cares about beyond just the environmental stewardship portion of it. So no single-use plastics, because we're attempting to avoid certain plastics in your body, which, again, jury's out on exactly what they do to you. However, I think most people know they don't want that in their body. And so always tying it back to a reason That's not just ethereal or meant for the greater good, but also a personal reason for people to choose sustainability is how we attempt to communicate this and get people to buy into it a bit more.
I love the way that you're really capturing a couple of different ideas there. One of them is that it's far better to have these micro messages at points that are important to the consumer than to have a big sign saying we're sustainable, right? That at each point, I'm getting a subtle message about the things that are, as we've sort of said, a lot of these sustainability issues are sort of invisible to the consumer. And, that focus on benefits, as opposed to, this is what I'm doing, give me some accolades for it, as opposed to, this is a benefit for you, that we're doing for you as the consumer, which I think is a good swing to you, Raz. I know that you consider a lot of these things to be important benefits for the consumer as well. And I wanted to just hear your thoughts on how hoteliers and other businesses that you work with are pulling out these water stewardship issues, and embedding it into their well-being programs and their messaging to their consumer.
Jonathan, thanks. And I'll draft a little bit off of what Mark and Brandon said, but I also have, I think, what could be a few parallel themes or stories just around ESG in general. I've alluded to this before. I kind of position even though we're focused on putting an end to single-use plastic water bottle waste, you will never ever hear me say we're saving the world. In fact, I heard an employee say that the other day. I said, please don't ever say that, because it conjures, first of all, we're not saving the world. What we're doing is restoring America's drinking water. But second, it's kind of this green effect that people tend to say, and it has these Herculean claims. And then a lot of people tend to think, oh, here's something sustainability, and then it's going to kind of suck for me personally as a consumer. Like, I'm not going to get water out of the faucet, or I'm not going to get clean towels, or this product's not going to taste as good, or the straw is going to melt in my mouth. Like, it ends up having this negative effect. So consumers want something that's sustainable, but they want it without compromise. So let me just give a parallel example of what I've done with our company over the last 12 years. You'll never hear us lead really with sustainability unless we're in a sustainability conversation and panel. But we position Flow Water as the world's best tasting, most trusted drinking water anywhere, free of plastic. So the halo around this is, what do consumers, guests, or hoteliers think about and care about? We focus on leveraging those without compromise. And the fact that it's good for the environment is a byproduct. Those are tailwinds. And so I think, I always caution hospitality, whether this is for Flow Water or water or any other topic that we're talking about in the world of sustainability, is if we lead with, hey, do this because it's good for the environment, suddenly we're putting the impetus on the guest or the property management group or the hotel ownership group in the form of compromised quality or increased costs. We're putting the impetus on do this because it's good for the environment, as opposed to, hey, let's do this because you're going to have a better, superior experience, and it happens to be good for the environment. And so bottled water is an example of that, right? If a hotel is giving away bottled water, this is one of the easiest ROIs and easiest lifts that we walk into day in, day out. We'll typically save a hotel $10, $20, $30, $50,000 annually just by replacing bottled water with Flow Water refill stations. But that only works if you're replacing the product with something that consumers like better. If you're replacing it with a faucet or just an old water fountain, they don't like it better, they don't trust it, then it doesn't work. It just throws them back at the beginning of the circle of dissonance. And so I'm using just Flow Water, given 12 years of work and experience working with thousands of hotels and millions of consumers across the US, just as a parallel example of, well, when you do something that presents sustainability without compromise, where you're really defining it based on product attributes and outcome, and it happens to be good for the environment, then you see people run with it. Then you get tailwinds that you're drafting on, as opposed to headwinds trying to sell someone on, hey, do this, it's not so good for you, but it's good for the environment. That doesn't work. The former works really, really well. That's where you get concentric circles spooling up.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, Mark, you were saying before that quite often you present, some of these solutions as being better than, better than the alternative, right? Not only do they have a better ROI for you as a business, but they also have a better guest experience. Would that be an example of what Raz is talking about there? And could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's 100% right. I think it's both good for the environment, good for from a financial perspective, good for the guest, but good for the guest in two primary ways. One of them is the better experience. Now that can result from, as an example, our mattresses, which use wool, latex, and steel springs. And that's basically it, and organic cotton around them. And that's good for the environment. That's good for the guest. From a sleeping experience, it's a fantastic mattress. Um, the other thing is for their personal health and wellness, you don't have any off-gassing. There's no fire retardant chemicals on these. As an example, that's good for the earth, that's good for the guest experience, but it's invisible, but it is incredibly good for your health. There's a lot of things that I think fall into that same category. This does, to some degree, come down to over time, and I know that I think we'll get into this a bit more, but a material science question with making products that are, we kind of as a country went from, and maybe worldwide, these incredibly natural products that had the list of ingredients to create them overall, that be that in your food or be that in the materials that you sit on and sleep on, being, one thing. It's just cotton, or now it's a cotton polyester mix, or now it's pure polyester, or now there's all these fire retardant chemicals with PFAS in them that we don't even know. We kind of forgot that all these things had started creeping into our systems. And so to some degree, sustainability and health and wellness, um, from a materials perspective, is a little bit going back to our roots from 50 or 100 years ago before these things started creeping into our system. And then trying to now keep them as effective, as renewable, as okay for your operations. And then most importantly, from a hotel perspective, how do you actually get them done cost effectively? Because a lot of those things that people used to make a long time ago have been replaced with significantly cheaper items using a blend and chemicals, et cetera. And so trying to harken back to those roots is actually quite the endeavor.
Mm. Mm. Brandon, I want to flip to you here, mate, and build upon that because you've got these two big markets, right? The convention, the mice market and the consumer market. You're doing a lot of things that are designed to be more sustainable, but what's the feedback that you get? How does that build, how does that support your brand? And I guess where I'm going with this is sometimes people feel, as Raz just said, that when you're going to be doing something sustainable, it's going to have a cost to the consumer that the service is going to be less, or the experience is going to be less pleasant. And as luxury hoteliers, that's the opposite of what you want to project. And so, tell us a little bit about how your initiatives and activities are helping to build that brand.
Yeah, I think one of the key sort of strategies or key pursuits are, as you alluded to, sort of finding sustainability solutions that obviously don't cost. And I'll give you one tangible real world example. So when we opened, we utilized grid-based power, grid-based electricity, which was predominantly natural gas. 2/3%, 66% came from natural gas. The rest was a variety of sources. We made a commitment in 2019, so 2 years prior to the resort, we would source 100% power. It took us a few years, given supply chain delays and the whole sort of COVID environment, that we opened a billion-dollar resort in. But we eventually achieved that with a mix of solar and battery storage, 25 miles northwest of here in the Nevada desert. So an incredible sustainability win. We switch again from natural-based electricity, natural gas-based electricity to solar power and battery power electricity. And it actually costs us less, right? So that's a huge sustainability win, huge environmental win, and a huge financial win. So finding sort of sustainability-based options and solutions doesn't always sort of have to cost more. I'll contrast that with what we do for waste management. So again, I alluded to 7 million square feet of conditioned space, 3,506 rooms and suites, 5,000-seat theater, casino, you name it. We do about 10 tons of waste a day. But in order to maximize that recycling and increase sort of waste diversion from the landfill, we sort all of our trash by. So we do single stream collection. You won't see a recycling bin on property aside from Starbucks, which has their own brand standards for recycling and compost. Aside from that, you won't see a recycling bin, just because we do single stream collection. We pay a team of specialized waste handlers to sort our trash literally by, and it increases diversion. It helps with food waste, right? So we send all of our food waste to a local pig farm as opposed to sending it, to a landfill or even composting. And then it also helps recover hotel assets that may have been sort of incorrectly thrown away by a guest, team member, etc. So that's actually incredibly costly. So 7 figures a year spent on waste management. So it's sort of a give and take between sort of financial spend and some of our sustainability-based efforts.
Well, I want to pick up on that in a minute, but I also wanted to give a little bit of space there to Mark. We've talked a lot about water issues, but I know that your organization is doing things beyond that. Energy and energy and waste, are typically the 3 things that we think about: water, energy, and waste. Anything that you want to share with the folks on the webinar today about some of the work that you're doing in energy waste or any other initiatives that you have at the moment?
Yeah, let's talk solar for just 1 second, because the solar tax credit got killed recently, and I'd love to advocate for people to continue to put solar in any way that they can. So it's still an incredible technology. It is fast deployed, and it can actually work in ways that you might not think. And so I'd love to give an example of that. So at our property, as an example, we do have most of our solar is invisible. You can't see it. It's on the roof. No guest ever sees it unless they're flying over in an airplane or something like that. But we do have one area where we've made the solar incredibly visible for everyone to experience, and that is we have this conservatory that we keep around 84 degrees year round, and we're in the Pacific Northwest, so we kind of have the opposite problem that Brandon has with regard to weather. It rains too much here, and so we attempted to kind of create an oasis where it feels like you're in Hawaii, 365 days out of the year. And instead of using glass, which is what virtually every other person has ever used to create a conservatory structure like this, we actually use triple pane solar panels that are very transparent. And what it does is it creates this dappled light effect, which actually keeps the temperature even better, and also completely prevents you from getting sunburned. So it kind of, and it's creating energy at the same time. So it has multiple beneficial effects, and also can helps us with energy consumption. It helps heat the pools actually. So there are fun ways to use sustainable materials, and I think solar is an exceptional example because it got to the point due, I think, a lot to the government credits that were being offered over the past 20 plus years or so, where it's incredibly strong. It's triple laminated. It's a very strong product, and it's very cheap, and it's even gotten to the point of around the same price as normal glass. So I'd love to keep that solar train going, even in the face of our new energy paradigm, which seems to focus very much on nat gas and nuclear, but we need all the energy we can get.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Sounds exciting. I think we've touched on the issue of explaining ROI a little bit, but we've all got somebody we report to. And for many hoteliers, that's the asset managers or the owners of the hotels. And I wanted to ask a question around, how do you, and I think each of you have touched on this in some way, but I want to give you a chance to really focus on this question. How do you justify some of these expenses? How do you talk to the accountants and the financial folks about the work that you're doing in these sustainability and wellness efforts? And Raz, I'm going to start with you first, but to give you a chance to to sort of explain a point that you made a little earlier about the ROI that comes from working with you.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. There's kind of two spheres that we generally work on with property management groups, hospitality ownership, hotel management. One ends up being, as I mentioned earlier, if anyone's giving away bottled water to consumers in guest rooms or guests in guest rooms or otherwise, that is an easy, immediate lift by deploying flow water refill stations because we've created a better product that consumers, 8 out of 10 consumers prefer flow water than their favorite bottle of water. So if we're taking a product that they already like and we're replacing it with something that they like even more in taste and trust, and we're reducing cost for hospitality management, it's a super easy no-brainer lift. It's like net wins all the way around for the hotel, for the guests, and for the environment. So that's positive. Another sphere, though, that we end up working in where maybe they're making revenue from that is really tied to guest NPS, guest outcomes, guest experiences. Are they writing Yelp or TripAdvisor or Google reviews? We'll do a lot of NPS testing, both of customers and from a customer perspective, the guest is the customer to always to us, and then the customer and the hotel is a secondary customer. But if we nail it for the guest, then everybody else is happy. And so looking at ROI as well as consumer trends and consumer behavior, if we're not looking at just the P&L side of it, is another way that we measure outcomes and impact. And I think gone are the days where we just start checking boxes with, hey, these are the features, these are the benefits, these are the ESG check boxes. We live in a world today where we have to focus on experiences and outcomes. And that either needs to be experiences and outcomes for the property management group or for the hospitality and or for the guest. And so when we focus on those things, then we move the needle positively in a direction that matters, that creates stickier consumers and stickier guest experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Financial benefits and guest experience benefits. It's a powerful combination. Mark, Brandon, your thoughts on this, because you're both working with, both reporting to people who are asking these questions, I assume. Do you want to start
Brandon's
with
going to have a lot more
Mark?
detailed answer, so I'll start. He's managing a much larger facility. Just like Raz says, first, the ones that are easy are the triple win, where it's good for the environment, good for the guest, and good for your pockets. So there's actually a huge amount of sustainability initiatives that are in that category. And so you start with those, and there's no reason not to do all of them, in my opinion. Single-use plastic, eliminating that is a clear example of it, and there's a lot of others. Then I start looking at, now they fall into two categories. One of them is they do improve the guest experience, but they cost us money. And the other one is they're invisible, and they're good for the environment, but they do have at least some payback period. So then you have to say, okay, what is my payback period that ownership is willing to accept? And include your operational costs with that. And that really does come down to how long typically they intend to hold the building, and is it a technology that's fleeting or is substantially improving such that you're like, well, I need to wait for it a little bit because it's not quite there. And there's a lot of things that do fall into that category too. But hotels and multifamily and office buildings, they're all typically valued on a cap rate basis. And so that, hey, if I increase my NOI by reducing expenses by $100, okay, that's worth $2,000 upon sale, the future value. And you can actually just back into some of these things pretty easily. And those would be the invisible ones. And you can say, okay, as long as I have a payback period of 5 years, 7 years, then it's something that's a no-brainer.
I love that idea of the benefit, the three sets of benefits and managing against those. That's the first time I've heard that, and I really appreciate it. Brandon, your point.
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously echo what Raz and Mark just said. Sort of every environmental metric has an associated financial cost, so you can put a financial dollar figure and ROI to these sustainability-based projects. But then, as I think Raz was first saying, looking at guest outcomes and guest experiences, and maybe just tying one real world example. So again, we opened a brand new resort in the year June 2021, 3 parking garages, 6,000 parking spaces, and a handful of EV chargers. And it did not take very long for guests to say, hey, you guys really need more EV chargers, right? There's a lot of folks coming in from California, which is a huge market, and just didn't have the infrastructure in place. So we quickly corrected that. We partnered with Porsche, offered Porsche destination charging stations in our parking garages, and then we added 50 level 2, 19.2 kW EV chargers, sort of fastest level 2 chargers on the market. And again, that's just sort of a real quick sustainability-based project based on guest feedback where, yes, there was an infrastructure cost, actually fairly significant in terms of the electrical infrastructure that's needed for, say, 50 EV chargers. There is a payback period in terms of what we could financially charge a guest, but ultimately it was a sort of sustainability-driven project based on, guest experiences, guest outcomes.
And all the material that I'm reading recently is focusing on the importance of EV charging as an amenity. I think, Brendan, what you and Mark and Raz have been talking about is, not only operational issues, which tend to be often a focus of sustainable conversations, but also asset building. And I know that you mentioned earlier that you're the largest lead property out there, and of course that adds a premium to the quality of the asset that you're developing, and so we do have these two dimensions, operational and long-term balance sheet sort of issues that are coming around from these sustainability conversations. I want to, I want to be mindful of the time that we have, and I want to give a little bit of space for the next question. And that is, we need to be forward thinking. It's a tumultuous time at the moment, but if you were advising a friend or a colleague in the luxury hospitality area, what should they be looking at? What innovation should they be looking at? What trends should they be looking at over the next, let's say 2 to 4 years, 2 to 5 years? What are the things that we should be thinking about as professionals in the hospitality industry in terms of these sustainability issues, water, energy, waste, whatever you think is important to be talking about as we move forward? And what I would do is, I think, Raz, from your perspective, what are the things that we should be thinking about for the next five years?
Well, I think if we look at the current political landscape, just as it relates to contemporary culture and trend lines, and again, I never make any political statements other than observations. And RFK and the MAHA movement is a major shift over the next 5 years. Like the raising the level of conversation awareness. We've had more conversations about fluoride in our drinking water in the last 12 months than we have over the prior 30 years. And so that's just one example of that. But if we look at air, water, food, those are 3 trends that with RFK driving the MAHA movement, that's going to be one considerable shift that I don't think is going away. There's too much momentum around that. And I think it's a good thing, even if you disagree with various kind of subcomponent points of whatever the topic of the day is for the movement. I love that we're having the conversation. I love that this is getting brought to the surface. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for Americans. So that's one. And then the second is, I started my career in Fortune 500 companies, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly. I know what big corporations are like and bigger companies, and sometimes we have a resistance to change. One of the things that I love to do, having run several early stage companies and mid stage companies, is I like trying a lot of different things. I put my, I kind of test but verify, test but verify. So one of the reasons why Flow Water provides free trials and free demos and water test analysis is we just want people to try products to see if it's a good fit for them. And so, I like taking a little bit of risk as it relates to trying. And as I do this as a business owner, I do this as a CEO. But I think that's the other thing that we could be looking at in hospitality is hey, let's demo stuff and try things and push the envelope a little bit and pilot so that we can really trust but verify, or test but verify, and see what the guest experience is. So three big things: air, water, food. The second is getting kind of a little entrepreneurial zeal and DNA to just pilot and test things, which I know a lot of people do, but I like to do that liberally. Then I know what is going to work, or I have a higher confidence interval.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like there are so many innovative ideas, and I think one of the things that makes a conversation like this is that you get new ideas from other places, and you can take them and you can run with them and you can try them out. Mark, I'll come to you with the same question. What should we be thinking about for the next 3 to 5 years?
I'll attack it from a couple different angles because I'm a developer, but also work on hotel operations and guest experience. So for probably the majority of the audience of this webinar, things that touch a guest experience are the easiest actually to replace. Um, Using compostable hotel key cards as an example. There are simple things that reduce waste, absolutely don't affect the customer experience, other than kind of broadcast a little bit that, hey, we are thinking about sustainability. Those are easy wins. And those materials have gotten so good, and they're continually getting better, like the compostable versions of plastics. For example, we don't use seed oils in our hotel at all. So there are things like that that actually will, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people, improve the taste of your food while simultaneously doing something good for your health, and simultaneously trying to prevent, many fields of, seed oils have dramatically changed the agricultural landscape, especially in countries not the US, and not in a very good way, deforestation, etc. So there are simple things that are good for you, taste better, and again, but those are like, that's an area that a lot of people don't think about. Then I would go one step down, and I would say there's also lots of low-hanging fruit from the facilities perspective. Getting an energy model done, as an example, it's not an incredibly expensive endeavor, but it could save you a lot of money, and you can see what the low-hanging fruit is. The typical one is, well, let's just use heat pumps instead of furnaces, and there's a very dramatic savings from that. And it also helps us with the energy problem that I mentioned before, because all of a sudden you can be using less energy because you're so much more efficient. And then if you're a developer, the building materials, you can go all the way down to that level, using mass timber instead of steel. Some of these things are interesting too. And if I shift slightly over to politics, right, as I mentioned, if you can reduce your energy footprint, that is good for America as well, because we are going to be into an energy deficit very soon. And I know that we're attempting to correct that. If we are shifting away from products that are imported and using mass timber from local forests, like our building, the first Cascada, is built from local forests. Like, just they come, it's less than 100 miles away. And that's good for sustainability. It's beautiful, and it's good for America as well, because it does support local businesses and uses a renewable resource from our ground. I'll stop there and let Brandon go.
We can do it all. We can. It's possible to do it. Brandon, last question for you. Same question. 3 to 5 years. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what we just heard and sort of emphasize two themes. The first is wellness, right? So we have an incredible world-class Awana spa that the only problem is it's too small, right? So guest demand is through the roof. So one of our capital projects in the near coming future is how can we expand that spa, increase the wellness offerings, increase the personalized wellness offerings for our guests. We have a fantastic gym, but increasingly we're seeing guests who want yoga mats, want Pelotons delivered up to their rooms, right? So time is money, so they don't have to leave their room to get a workout in. So I think an increase in wellness offerings for all guests, both business and leisure travel. And the other, I echo what Mark said in terms of smart technology. So we just partnered with Apple, whereby your iPhone now is your so something like 25 to 30% of the world has an iPhone, right? So your Apple Wallet can become your room key. So you can have a digital check-in whereby you're avoiding the traditional sort of plastic-based room keys. And you say, all right, well, that's not a huge sustainability win. But consider one room key is about 2 ounces of plastic, right? The guest typically requests 2, maybe more if you have a family. right? You have 3,500 rooms and suites. Those ounces of plastic add up, whereby last year we avoided several tons of plastic just by digital key utilization. So the advancements in sort of smart technology where you increase convenience for guests and then also have some sort of tangible sustainability wins as well along the way. I think sort of, again, advancements in sort of all things smart technology in the very near future.
That's fantastic. This has been an incredible webinar. Thank you so much for the insights that you've shared. I think we've touched on so many of the big trends that are happening in the marketplace right now, and so much just solid information that any hotelier could take and really put to work later this afternoon or tomorrow. This is the sort of practical stuff. So I want to take a minute to thank you, Brandon, Mark, and of course, Raz. We really appreciate your contributions here today. And we're right on the end of the hour. So tap out now. And again, thank you. And for all of those who are here, just want to remind you about all the incredible things that the International Luxury Hotel Association are doing. Make sure that you check out the other activities that they're doing at any given time. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meet the hotel industry's biggest leaders at Inspire Luxury Hospitality Conference. Back for its 16th year, Inspire 2025 is held in November in Prague and December in Las Vegas. It's the premier event for luxury hospitality. Land deals, learn strategy, and explore innovation. Visit us at inspire.ilha.org.